everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Read Right to Left podcast. I am G, joined by my always wonderful co-host, Ray from Whimsical Pictures.
Hello.
And today, our topic is something that is very near and dear to both of us, something we really, really love, and we've been very excited about. We were supposed to do this one in January.
Udon.
But Udon... always trusty. Udon once again delayed some of their stuff.
I can't. Now that I have it in my hands, I can't hate them.
Yes.
It feels like all that 5 years was just like nothing because I have it now.
Yes. And using that to lead in, today we're going to be talking about the Year 24 group, all of these wonderful women who are incredibly influential in manga history and what manga is today, of course within shoujo manga, but just in general, I think. And there's actually surprisingly quite a bit more of their manga available in English than I think people realize, and it's sort of a travesty that more people aren't aware of these women and this group and what they represent and their works. So we're going to be talking about Year 24.
Yep.
Finally.
So with the goal of hopefully just like introducing some folks who maybe have never heard of this group before to their existence, and maybe drumming up some interest in these truly masterful titles that we are fortunate enough to have access to in English. So yeah, what is the Year 24 group is probably a good place to start.
Or really, who are they?
Yes, who are they? The Year 24 group, which is the Niju Yonengumi in Japanese, sometimes called the Hana no Niju Yonengumi, the Magnificent Year 24 group.
They're also called, sometimes I've seen them referred to as the 49ers or the Magnificent 49ers in English.
Yes.
Because Year 24 is in reference to the actual like Showa. Is it Showa? Yeah, Showa 24.
Yep. Yep. Showa Year 24, which is 1949 in the Gregorian calendar. It's when they were born, mostly. Around that year. And I guess, I mean, it was mostly chosen pretty arbitrarily as like a marketing term. But it's also just like, it was notable that, so many of the women who were starting to get into manga and be making shoujo manga were, essentially like the same age as some of the readers. Like they were late teens, early 20s. And pointing out their birth year, all being around 1949, kind of lumps them together as being part of this new generation of creators.
Yes, and especially for shoujo manga, because I think up until this point, a lot of people were more familiar, or took, even now, but took shonen manga as sort of the more serious or viable or like general type of manga, but their works really brought shoujo manga into its own, gave it much more of a following than even the shonen stuff at the time. So they were really, really challenging and revolutionizing the whole industry, not just in their stories but in their artwork and everything else. So
yeah, and I think it's important to think of them as like, people who grew up on shoujo manga of the 60s and were fans of it, fans of shoujo manga, becoming creators of shoujo manga, because before this, most creators of shoujo manga were men.
Yes.
So you've got your Makoto Takahashi. I've got his art book over there. You've got your, like, Osamu Tezuka.
Yeah.
There were women doing shoujo manga, like Hideko Mizuno is great. Maki Miyako, I think, also is another one. but you could count them essentially on one hand.
Yeah.
Like, the women who were making shoujo manga. So, like, the fact that we had this influx of female mangaka writing manga for women was significant as well.
And with very complex stories, very emotionally deep stories, because for a lot of shoujo manga up until that point, from what I've read, not the stories themselves, but what I've read written about this period of manga.
See, this is interesting. Romance manga was pretty taboo for shoujo manga. It was thought to be too mature for girl readers.
Yeah.
Too risque to even have like a heterosexual romance, which I think is interesting when you consider what I'm sure we'll talk about a little later, which is the heavy homosexual themes that you see in Year 24 works. Both Yuri and BL got their start with the Year 24 group. The first, like, love scene that you see in shoujo manga is between two boys in Kazetoki no Uta. Yeah, so in the 60s, really, and the 50s, there was the most common type of story was either about the relationship between a mother and daughter or between female friends, and it was a continuation of like girls' novels that had the sort of pseudo-romantic, super deep friendships that if you read Yuri manga now, you might be aware of as like the class S kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
And that was really... We see some boundary pushing. Hideko Mizuno in particular was a big advocate for romance in shoujo manga, as well as themes of historical fiction and fantasy. But the vast majority of shoujo manga was really just like these very soppy, they're cute, but you know, there's not a whole lot of depth or variety in the types of stories that you get. So
a little bit
certainly
toothless.
There was yes, a broadening of, and I feel like you see like in how narrow the scope of a lot of these stories, like how few different stories were being told, you kind of see how it's essentially a bunch of older men assuming what girls are into.
Yeah. And then so when Year 24 were writing or creating their manga, they were really breaking out of a lot of that, and it appealed to readers, I think, a lot more than what had been shoujo manga up until that point.
Yeah, and as for the members of the Year 24 group, just to give you some names to have in your head, the three that are like on like the membership of Year 24 is pretty nebulous. Like the term is very nebulous. It's again, it was a term created by Keiko Takemiya and her editor at the time, Junya Yamamoto, essentially for marketing purposes. She's always been very adept at self-promotion. Which, much respect.
Yeah.
Get that bread.
Appreciate that hustle.
For sure. And, so it's like, who's a member, who's not a member is very, like, you could argue for days about it. It doesn't really matter. But the three names that are pretty much always on that list are going to be Moto Hagio, Keiko Takemiya, of course, both of whom have manga in English.
And who we've talked about before.
Who I never stop talking about. Ever. And Yumiko Oshima, who unfortunately we don't have any of her works in English. I guess like a couple of her prominent ones would be Banana Bread Pudding.
Yeah.
And the other one is the one about the little kitten that has a hard to pronounce title. Wada no Kuniboshi.
The Star of Cottonland.
Yes. which is adorable. I have a poster of it on my wall.
Aww.
But other membership, right now I am looking at kind of the Japanese Wikipedia page for the Year 24 group. This is a fairly, like, these are the names that I tend to see, so I thought it was a fairly good summation.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be like Yasuko Aoike, who had From Eroica with Love partially released in English back in the day.
Yep. CMX put that one out.
Yep. And I'm jealous of G because she has a couple volumes of it. Toshie Kihara, who I have a couple people on my Twitter who are constantly talking up Toshie Kihara. I think her most prominent work that I see mentioned is Marito Shingo, which is a BL, I believe. Question mark. Ryoko Yamagishi, who her like longest and most famous series are called Arabesque, which is a ballet manga, and Hi Izuru Tokoro no Tenshi, which is a historical fiction manga about a really famous Japanese historical figure called Prince Shotoku. And it portrays him as being sort of this devious, cross-dressing figure who was in love with another nobleman. So we see some homosexual themes there.
Sounds good.
Yeah, of course. But mostly what I hear Yamagishi mentioned for is her horror titles, which I have a few in my library that I have not been able to get to yet. And then we have Sasaya Nanaeko. We have Yamada Mineko. We have Kishi Yuko and Kimura Minori. As a few figures that are generally considered to be within the Year 24 group. There are others who were not necessarily affiliated with the other artists, but are commonly considered to be part of Year 24. The most prominent would be, of course, Ryoko Ikeda, who did The Rose of Versailles, as well as Claudine, which are both available in English.
Yep.
Yukari Ichijo is another one who's very prolific.
Shio Sato as well, isn't she? Because
yes.
We got a couple of her titles released way back in the day by Viz.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that illegal run of 4 shoujo stories had Changeling and in there. Which is one of her titles. If you're willing to hunt down really, really, really old flipped Viz titles from the late 90s that are kind of not easy to find because they weren't exactly allowed to be published, then have at it. You can read some of her stuff there.
Yeah. I mean, what I wouldn't give to have a copy of 4 shoujo stories, to be honest.
Yeah, I was very lucky in finding mine. It's a hard one.
Actually, what I wouldn't give is, like, the $200 or whatever that they're always charging for it.
Smart.
One day, maybe. I'll keep dreaming. So, yes, Shio Sato is often associated with this group. Hideko Mizuno as well. Of course, she was very prominent in the 60s, but she, of course, didn't stop making manga all of a sudden. She has a very prominent 70s title about musicians called Fire that I often see people talking up. So yeah, that's a general, like, pretty solid, like, grouping, I think.
Yeah.
Sorry if we left out your fave. There is a whole other, like, branch of the Year 24 group that is the post-Year 24 group that I didn't even get into, so, like...
There's a lot There's a lot of wonderful ladies. They wrote a lot of wonderful manga, and their impact really can't be overplayed with just how influential a lot of their works are and were.
Yeah, and I do want to point out that while, we do want to, make this podcast to point out the Year 24 group in particular and their contributions, that, I feel like there's this perception that, Year 24 were the only women making shoujo manga in the 70s. And obviously, that's not the case. There were several different movements and trends happening in shoujo manga at the same time. The otometique style is definitely sort of a forerunner to our modern, cute, adorable shoujo rom-coms. Very stylish and cutesy. You have, the grand historical epics in the vein of The Rose of Versailles were very popular at the time. And I just, as much as I want to show off how awesome these Year 24 titles are, I also want people to understand that there was a lot going on in shoujo manga at the time, and there are a ton more super talented creators that are not necessarily part of this particular trend.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the 70s were a huge change for women just in general. There was a huge amount of social change globally. And I think that the Year 24 group really kind of is emblematic of that shift of women becoming more prominent as creators and being more well respected and just all sorts of things. So it's not so much that as Ray said, it's not so much that these were the only people making shoujo manga or even popular shoujo manga. Of course not. But they really are...
Most of them weren't that popular.
Yeah, exactly. But...
Only with weirdos.
like us. But it is emblematic of just everything that was happening. And they've kind of become the poster children for this era.
Yeah.
So
I feel like their particular brand of popularity within a certain niche group who latched on hard is super emblemized by whenever I talk about Moto Hagio or whatever, because I meet a lot of women who were growing up in the 70s who are teachers now, and when I talk about The Rose of Versailles or whatever, which was one of the most popular titles of the 70s.
Yeah.
They're oh, The Rose of Versailles, I remember that. And they get all excited, and then I'm they're who's your favorite? And I'm Moto Hagio, and they're who's that? But then it's every once in a while, one of our school supporters, I guess, who helps out ALTs with just navigating paperwork and stuff. I was just talking to her, and I think I had the Poe clan on me or something. I was yeah, I'm reading this right now, and she's is that Moto Hagio? I'm you know who this is? She's Takemiya and Hagio, they were gods to us. So,
wow. Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said about, who they are and what they represent. And I think also, in English especially, we really owe a lot to Rachel Thorne, who kind of brought a lot of these titles to English because of her own interest and friendship with, most notably, Moto Hagio, but really built up this trying to get 70s shoujo and Year 24 stuff into English readers' hands for years and years and years, and now we're finally kind of seeing the fruit of all of that push, where it is becoming a little bit more sustainable for companies to be licensing and publishing this in English.
Yeah. And neither of us actually know what we're talking about at all. So,
yeah.
if you find yourself interested in these works and these women, definitely check out Rachel Thorne. She has a website that she's kind of had under construction for a while. And, of course, check her out on Twitter as well.
Mm-hmm.
She's a genius who knows a lot about manga.
Yeah. So, speaking of, do we want to talk about some particular authors and their titles? Some of our favorites?
Yeah.
Some that I'm sure people are aware of because they're available in English. Both of us can't ever stop talking about them, it seems like. So if they've been listening for a while, hopefully the names might be familiar, if nothing else.
Maybe. Yeah, so I think maybe first of all, the most recent one, the one
most
that sort
exciting.
of prompted us to make this episode, many years in the making, from Udon Entertainment, we have just got the first beautiful, beautiful, beautiful omnibus volume of The Rose of Versailles, one of the most influential, not shoujo manga, just manga of all time.
Yes. It's a tour de force, honestly. It's kind of amazing how popular Rose of Versailles continues to be, even now. It's just hugely, hugely popular, and everyone should buy it and read it because it deserves that.
And so influential. This is by Ryoko Ikeda. It is going to be 5 volumes in this sort of collected omnibus form.
Mm-hmm.
It is up there in price, but like, if you can get it on sale or whatever, it is so worth it. I feel like I was so struck by how compulsively readable this volume was.
Yeah.
Start to finish, I was just like, I read it in one sitting because I was just like, didn't want to stop. Every page turned to new revelation. It was great.
Yeah, it's something like 22 chapters in this first volume, and I sat down to read it, and I was like, I'm only going to read, 5 chapters. I don't have a huge amount. I ended up reading the whole thing just immediately. Couldn't stop. It's a beautiful release, and it's just a really compelling story. All of the characters are very interesting and understandable, if not inherently likable. There's
all the betrayal, man. The rich people drama.
So much drama. So for anyone who isn't aware of what The Rose of Versailles is, it's the story of the main character is Lady Oscar, who is a young woman who's been raised as a son by her father, and she works within the Royal Guard, but it's kind of she's working as the Royal Guard during the period when Marie Antoinette came to Versailles as the young bride of the Dauphine, which obviously is this all historically, like, that's something that happened. This is loosely based on historical events. So pre-revolutionary France. And a lot of the early chapters is very much about Marie becoming more acquainted with France versus Austria, where she's from.
Yeah, so something that was really big in the 70s was like, there was, in shoujo magazines, was that there was a lot of interaction with the readers.
Mm-hmm.
So The Rose of Versailles, having been one of just like outrageously popular when it was running as well. And you see the ads, like they printed them in this volume that are like, the breakout huge hit, Rose of Versailles continues with another chapter.
Yeah.
And so you see like Ryoko Ikeda responding to fan letters and tweaking the story as she goes based on what's popular. And one of the biggest changes is that she originally was going to make a story about Marie Antoinette, with Marie Antoinette as a shoujo heroine.
Yeah.
But Marie Antoinette was not the most popular character.
Not nearly.
So I think some people might be a little surprised, especially if they're coming to this from the anime, which is very Oscar-focused from the start, or just, like, from hearing that Lady Oscar is amazing. Because she is.
She is.
How, like, little prominence she really has in this first volume, especially the first half of it.
She's definitely...
It really is...
She's definitely, like, just almost the Greek court. Like, she's just the side reactionary to a lot of the events going on. And she's kind
of playing straight man to it.
Yeah, you can see slowly how she is becoming more prominent within the story, within this first volume, but it really is Marie's, time to shine with this first volume.
Yeah. And then towards the end, we get Oscar starting to form a relationship with the first of many different suitors.
Yes. Fersen and Andre's already in the story as well, and there's...
Fersen. Andre has, like, 4 panels in this entire volume, and he's like, end game.
Yeah, it's like, he's here, guys.
He's here somewhere. There's Fersen, and then there's Rosalie, who is the one that I think Oscar is currently the most smitten with.
Yes.
Because she is also a bisexual king, so... which I have to point out. Because
well, of course. You're legally obligated to.
Yeah, so as the series goes on, you will see Oscar come into more and more prominence. You will see things getting downright revolutionary. We already see Oscar spouting some fairly treasinous things.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on in history at that point in time. And there's quite a lot of within this volume focused on the disparity between obviously the uber wealthy, the royals, and then just the populace of France, and how the country who loved Marie and loved what she represented really turned on her, and how that happened, which I think if you're not that familiar, like I'm sure everyone knows that France had a revolution, but if you're not that familiar with like the ins and outs of it, it does make it quite easy to understand. It's not anything too complicated here.
Like, it's complicated, but it's like not. It's for preteens.
Yes, right? Yes, exactly. And there's a lot. It's very, very overall
theatrical,
dramatic. Yeah, there's a lot here where
there's just like so many reaction images that are just
it's very
chef's kiss,
soap opera-esque in just how all of these characters, they're betraying each other. There's so much scheming, which is reality, like that happened, but it's funny to
like
see
the two pauper sisters, and like one of them's like, I'm going to rise from my station in life, and she like manipulates her way to the top, and then the other one's like, no, I must help Maman. And like and then Maman gets like run over by like a noblewoman, and she's like, no, I will get my revenge, and like also like rises through the top with minimal scheming, and then they meet each other with like eyes like daggers in like a ball.
Dun, dun, dun. And then
it's
other
so
things are
amazing.
It's I mean, there's, if you want drama in your life, where's the Versailles?
God, I just like, it's so amazing. Like, why don't we tell stories like this anymore?
We do. They're called soap operas, and people don't take them seriously because they're lady fiction.
But it's so good. It's so good. And Yeah, the art's beautiful.
It is.
The dresses are so good.
There's nothing more wonderful than being able to just splurge out on French historical fashion, especially of the upper class. Just like, oh, so many ruffles, so many frills. So,
the fun fact I was going to mention.
Yep.
When we were talking about the revolution and, the class disparity focus here, fun fact I always like to mention is that just before she started the Rose of Versailles, when she was in college, Ryoko Ikeda was a very outspoken member of the Japanese Communist Party's youth division. So that's like one of my favorite manga fun facts.
Makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Certainly see that in her work.
I feel it so much.
But yes, Rose of Versailles, fantastic, and you should definitely support Udon for giving us this behemoth of a series in English after for so long as well. It's really its first time available in English as well, which is crazy.
It's been one of the most notoriously difficult licenses. Like one of those holy grail licenses that everyone always talked about how difficult and expensive it was. So it's pretty amazing that someone managed to land it.
Yeah, and that is definitely why it took Udon 5 years to get it out as well. Like, I complained a lot about why it was taking so long, but they put a lot of work into it, and they've made it, I think, the best that they can. So it's definitely...
I love that gold foiling in the spine. That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it right now.
It's such a beautiful release.
It's embossed. Run your fingers over it.
It's got color pages. It's got the archival quality paper. It's just all around wonderful, guys. Just
high gloss, beautiful, graphic novel comic book paper. It's so good.
And you can pre-order up until volume 3 already, so that's over half of the series. So jump on it. It may have taken 5 years. It may have taken 5 years for them to release it, but at least they are getting it out somewhat quickly now that it's all done.
Yeah, well, it's like everyone who worked on it has been so excited.
Yeah. It's definitely a passion project for everyone involved.
Yeah, and I want it to pay off, please. Get it. It's so good. I can't, and I'll say, the fact that, the main character is Lady Oscar, who's sort of playing straight man to all this drama. I mean, she's dramatic, too, but, in her own cool way.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of swashbuckling as well, because she's a general in the Royal Guard. I feel like, if you're scared off by us saying, soap opera, it is, and in the best way.
Yeah.
But also, it might be a good starting point for more dramatic,
historical
shoujo stories.
Yeah. Lots of scheming, lots of twists and turns and action,
politicking,
adventure,
revolutions.
Yes. And also it has an anime, which again is also out of print, so it's hard to recommend, but it is a really great series. Also, I got a live action film back in the 70s, which was it was a Japanese production, but it was completely in English with English actors. It's a really weird little thing.
But why not French?
I don't know. They filmed in France.
Also, there's the the Rose of Versailles in the form that it was always meant to take, which is as the flagship musical for the Takaratsuka Revue.
Yeah, yes. And that still has shows. It's still going on strong.
Oh, yeah.
People love it.
What I wouldn't give to see Takaratsuka perform the Rose of Versailles.
But they have Rose of Versailles makeup line. They have Rose of Versailles. There's a lot of Versailles in Japan.
The Rose of Versailles waterproof mascara is actually really good, and I use it right now. If you want your shoujo style, like 70s shoujo style eyelashes, I can vouch for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, nothing says 70s shoujo more than those dramatic lashes. So.
Especially Ikeda's art style, man.
Yeah. Yeah, those are some luscious lashes. But I think we've gushed over Versailles for long enough. Everyone go read it.
The other Ikeda title that we have in English is from Seven Seas. Mm-hmm. It's short. It's like a novella type of length. It's called Claudine. Mm-hmm. This is probably one of the first sort of narratives focusing around a transgender character in manga. And it is dated.
Yeah. It's certainly not.
But she tried.
Yeah, there's if we're talking about like you can't really compare it to a lot of current manga that has trans characters as the focus or even as side characters. It's definitely a product of its time. It's aged. But I think and it's definitely like within that tragic sort of storytelling. It's not the type of uplifting, hopeful story that you want for trans characters. So it's not like my first recommendation for readers who want trans characters. There's a lot more modern day manga that do that a lot better. But if you're wanting the 70s overwrought, dramatic, tragic style of story, it's good at what it does. It's not anything that it wasn't trying to be, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's an interesting character study. It's incorrect about a lot of things.
Yes.
But as a sort of tragic character piece, it's interesting. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It's also
short.
To me,
it's short. It felt like a bit of a prelude to the Rose of Versailles.
Yeah. There's definitely shades
Claudine
of Oscar.
looks a lot like Oscar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, Oscar, I feel like if the Rose of Versailles were written in 2020, I kind of feel like she would be written as non-binary. Mm-hmm. Like, she pretty much already is. But, yeah, I'm not using she, her pronouns to, like, discount any possibility of non-binary identity. Mm-hmm. It's just what's most commonly used within the work by her and by the people around her. So.
Yes, yeah.
And, she doesn't seem to mind any pronouns, really.
No. She's cool, just so long as you don't underestimate her or expect her to conform to gender roles or gender expectations for women of the period. She's fine.
Yeah. I think getting back to God. Yeah, one of the things that's really cool about her, I think, is the fact that usually you expect in this type of, like, Mulan story, where it's, like, a female soldier surrounded by men, that she's gonna be, like, underestimated, and she has to hide that she's a woman, and nobody knows, and, like, there's this big reveal where they find out, but it's, like, Oscar's just, like, she was raised as a son, but, like...
Everyone knows
it also
she's
seems,
a girl.
Everyone just... It doesn't seem like she was, like, her father was hiding anything from anyone.
Yeah.
Like, everyone's just like, oh, yeah, that's Oscar. And they're like, wow, he's handsome. And they're like, actually, she's a girl. And they're like, wow, she's handsome.
Yeah. Pretty much.
So, I think that's kind of refreshing, actually, is, like, we're skipping that whole step, and it's just like, no, they just totally respect her because she's, like, shown her mettle.
Yeah.
Time and time again.
Yeah, she's
from a very important family.
Excellent swordswoman, excellent guard, has gone up
They just kind of accept her as the heir of the Georget.
Yeah.
Francois du Georget family.
Yeah.
Her father was like, yep, she's gonna be the heir. So that's all. That's kind of cool. I don't know. It's like it gets kind of tiring when it's the same like misogynistic crap over and over again. Yeah. Much as I love Mulan stories. But it's just nice to see a bit of a different take, I guess.
A bit of a change. But back to Claudine.
Yes. Sorry.
we will definitely get we'll definitely go on tangents in this episode, so apologies.
I just have a lot of feelings.
We love all of these titles. Some more than others, but they're all good and all worth the read. But Claudine is an interesting one. I think it's definitely, if you're into this period of shoujo manga, if you care about reading sort of the first manga about a trans person, regardless of how accurate or how problematic it may be. Yeah. Then
it's certainly very sympathetic.
Yes.
Which I think a lot of early manga about that feature trans characters are not. Like, even now, manga that features trans characters is not very sympathetic.
It's of its time, but it definitely has its merits. It is worth the read if you're willing to read a tragic story about a trans character, because I mean, I understand if you don't want to. There's enough of that shit in real life.
Yeah. So, and content warning for like misgendering of Claudine throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, even the
which
title,
was a conscious translation choice.
Yes, but... and even the title's kind of dead naming this character, so it's like there's issues, but. It's short, it's to the point, it does what it was trying to do and was wanting to do, I think. And so it's up to you whether you want to read it. It's certainly an interesting little piece of history, I think. And it's nice to have it in English.
Yes. And overall, I would say, like, if you're interested in, like, LGBT manga history, this is a must. And also, if you just are like me and you just love just, like, living inside 70s shoujo manga, and you just love the style and the beauty and the elegance and the poetry of it, it is a very beautiful book. So, worth it for that purpose as well. If you're just like, I want to read all of the 70s shoujo manga in English. It's a very well-told story. It's just that the premise itself needs work.
Yeah. And I think, as you were saying with Versailles, I think if it was written now, there's much more understanding and nuance to this type of story for a lot of creators that I think it wouldn't have been written in quite the same way if it was a modern publication. But, you know.
So that's Ikeda. Mm-hmm. The other, like, prominent work of hers that is somewhat existent in English would be Dear Brother or Oni Samae, which, I don't know, is it exclusively fan subs you can watch that anime with? Is it available from someone?
It used to be available by, oh god, what were they called? They were the company that kind of...
Oh, the Soul whatever?
Yeah, not like one. I can't remember quite what their thing was, but it was like each release from them was kind of kickstarted or crowdfunded on their website, and the entirety of Dear Brother did get released that way. They also did like Creamy Mommy and some other stuff, but they no longer exist, and so the DVD sets no longer exist. I'm pretty sure they had to buy like agreement have to destroy any remaining copies after a particular date. So if you can find them in the wild, you are really lucky. It's a very hard series to get your hands on, and which is a shame because it's a one that I've wanted to watch. Yeah, Anime Souls is the name of that company that used to.
I knew
that.
It was something.
Souls,
with soul in it.
But the manga itself is only 3 volumes. I think this one, I'm going to come back to it with some of the questions that we've gotten. But I do think this is one that has potential to be licensed in English for the future because it is shorter and it is quite well known.
Perhaps depending on how well The Rose of Versailles sells.
Yes.
I'm very open about my desires. I don't know, do we want to... I think Hagio we should save for last because she has a bunch of stuff in English.
Yes. I think we should go
maybe we'll talk about From Aoike with Love.
Yeah.
Just real quick.
Yeah,
because
okay.
I haven't read any of this title because it is very hard to find in English. But I know that you have read 2 volumes, I think you said?
Yeah, I have 2 volumes of the original 15 volumes that were released in English for this series. It was put out by CMX Manga a long time ago now. And it was never completed. 15 volumes is a little less than half of the actual manga. I think it finished in 2012 with 39 volumes in Japanese. So it was a very, very long-running manga. This one started in 76. So that kind of just gives you an idea that this one was definitely one that survived for a while. But this is the story of a gentleman thief. He is and as he steals, because he steals things that are beautiful, he desires beauty in his life, and he feels that he deserves to own everything and everyone who is beautiful to him.
What a mood.
Yeah. So his name is Dorian Red Gloria. He's the Earl of Gloria, obviously a country that does not exist, but he's very openly gay. He has much desires for the beauty in life, as I said. And the first 2 volumes especially, we're kind of introduced to him because he I guess steals kidnaps a beautiful young boy and young man, and his siblings are trying to track him down to save their brother, but alas, their brother has fallen in love with this wily Earl. And then our other main character is Major Klaus Heinz von dem Eberbach, who is a West German NATO major officer, and he's kind of like the Zenigata to the Lupin the Third. He's following him, trying to stop him, and Aoike always sort of just wriggles out, doesn't ever manage to get caught, even though they come face to face with each other all of the time. And yeah, so Aoike is this thief's name. It's his alter ego, obviously short for Earl of Gloria. Also erotic is very
yeah. I was like, that is not obvious, G.
But his calling card after he steals something is he leaves a note that says "From Aoike with Love." And so
this is all such a mood.
He basically just goes around the world, generally Europe, and steals things, artwork, jewelry, young men, as I said. And Klaus is always one step behind. He's trying to capture Aoike and bring him to justice. But needless to say, there is a lot of homoerotic tension between the two. And it's quite each chapter,
just like in Lupin.
Yes, exactly. and also like Lupin, it's very self-contained. Each chapter or each couple of chapters is within its own story, so you can kind of jump into it wherever. You don't really need the first volume to understand what's going on. It's you know, there's an art heist, and there's a beautiful gay man with extremely luscious hair who has stolen the thing, and then a very straight-laced German running after him, trying to stop him.
His hair is pretty luscious too.
Yeah, it is very luscious, but he's definitely the no humor type of.
He's got great sideburns.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very much so. So it's quite funny. It is meant to be a comedy. Doesn't take itself too seriously. There is a lot to it that is, again, very evocative of Lupin the Third, even like Golgo 13 to a certain extent, in just like the structure of being very self-contained adventure. And yeah, it's very good. I can definitely see why this didn't sell very well in English, or didn't do very well. It's sort of not exactly the type of thing that was popular at the time, and really even now. But it's well worth hunting down. Some of the volumes are okay priced to find, but others are just disgustingly expensive. So I can't in good conscience recommend you buy it or collect it, but ooh, it's good. It's a fun time. If you like Lupin type stories, then Aoike with Love is kind of just the gay equivalent of that. gay feminine,
70s equivalent.
70s shoujo equivalent of that. It's also, the title apparently is a joke off of From Russia with Love, which is a James Bond novel. So, you know, that's kind of the mood we're going for. It's a good time.
It sounds like a great time. It's near the top of my list of holy grail out of print manga. To find someday. Along with 4 shoujo stories. So, yeah, that is, I believe, the only Yasuko Aoike title that's available in English.
Yeah,
available so. In quote marks. So, I guess we'll get to Keiko Takemiya, who is very prolific, like many of these women, but we only have 2 titles from her in English. Both of which I believe are desperately out of print.
Yes.
They're old vertical, so they have gone the way of blackjack. And there are 2 of her sci-fi titles. So one of the things about Year 24, of course, we talked about them broadening the sort of types of genres you would see in shoujo manga. One of the sort of biggest genres that they brought into the realm of shoujo manga was science fiction. So, and actually, I believe Tutera is technically a shonen manga.
I think so.
So we're also bringing a little of the shoujo emotionality into shonen manga, which is also cool. And so we have Andromeda Stories, which is drawn by Keiko Takemiya, but written by somebody else.
Ryu Mitsue? Mitsuse.
There you go.
Mitsuse. Ryu Mitsuse.
Yeah. Which I haven't read in years. So I think I read it in high school. So from the library. And then Tutera, which is one of my favorite manga. So.
Yeah, I love Tutera. It's very, very good. And if anyone listening has the opportunity, because it's an interesting thing in that it's had a couple different anime adaptations. It has a film and a TV show, and each one is including the manga, is a little bit different in how they adapt it, and it focuses on different themes. So you get a really interesting different experience with each of them. But yeah.
So I know about the movie that I believe is from the 70s or early 80s.
Toward the movie was 1980.
80. Okay. And I know about the 2004 television series as well. Is there another version?
There's a 2007 one. I don't know if that's the one you're thinking of.
That might be the one I'm thinking of.
Which did get, both of those things got English releases as well, just by the way. Nozomi put out the film, and then Bandai put out the television series back in the day.
Yeah.
So
they're both kind of hanging around the Right Stuff holiday sales usually.
yeah.
So
pick them up if that sounds interesting.
Unlike the manga, they're not that hard to find.
Yeah. If you're happy with DVDs, you can certainly get them for cheap. So
this is a grade A 70s space opera.
Yes.
And it's only 3 thick omnibus volumes long, but it's a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Basically, it spans decades, and there's tons of different characters and stuff going on, but the basic overarching plot line is that we have this sort of dystopian world that is not Earth. Earth has long since been abandoned due to climate disaster.
What a mood.
Yeah, right? Maybe it would be too depressing to read it right now. Too real, man. But, yeah, so they've abandoned Earth because it's dead. Now they live on another planet, where basically, it's a concept you see pretty often. I think of The Giver, where, kids kind of get assigned parents, and they're raised until 15 or 16.
Mm-hmm.
At which point they have to go through this, test, which, puts them through a machine that essentially, makes them conforming to society.
Yeah.
And it also, one of the big things it does is that there is a deviant race of genetically altered humans called the Mu.
Yeah.
Who have developed psychic powers, who their bodies are weak, but their minds are strong. They have psychic powers. And they cannot be affected by this machine. In fact, the machine is designed to weed them out. So
yeah,
it's very traumatic to them. And we have a boy who, oh gosh, Jomi, right? He goes through the machine. Jomi Marcus Sheen. These are all such good names.
Oh, I love it.
So he goes through the machine and basically awakens as a Mu, but he is not physically harmed by the machine.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up being taken in by the Mu. They find him just in the nick of time and take him to their spaceship, where he is immediately taken in because of his able body, by the leader of the Mu, Soldier Blue, who's my favorite character.
Of course, he's amazing. He's if you don't love Soldier Blue, then I don't know what's wrong with you, honestly.
He's so good. And
he's
then
beautiful.
so he's taken in as the apprentice to the current leader of the Mu in order to eventually replace him as the leader. And in their grand directive, which is they have no place to live on this planet that has rejected their existence, so they are determined to return to the Earth that was abandoned centuries before, to Terra.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that is such a bare bones explanation.
Yeah, there's a lot in here. There's genocide, there's cultural differences, there's a lot of space opera type of
there's a lot of different generations.
Yeah. We didn't talk about, what's his name? Keith? Is that his name?
Keith. He's like the other protagonist slash antagonist. He's not a good person. He's an android.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know it. And he's like struggling with that. And he also ends up taking in a Mu, like a secret Mu under his wing.
Yeah.
But like his whole thing is to destroy, to eliminate the Mu. Because he's been raised to do that. He's literally programmed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, as with any like good space opera, there's a lot of theming going on here.
Yeah.
About, you know, obviously like security versus freedom.
Fighting against the oppression of just there's a lot of stuff. And
marginalized groups.
Yeah.
The changing of hands between generations is a big thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when the kids think differently than the parents. There's of course some gender fuckery because this is year 24.
Yeah.
There's Keith's whole like identity crisis about like, you know, what does it mean to find out that he's an android? Like, are his thoughts his own?
Yeah.
And like, what about the Mu? Like, what do their psychic powers mean? What does it mean that they are essentially a collective consciousness on this spaceship?
Mm-hmm.
And disability is a big thing.
Yes.
Because the Mu are all more or less physically disabled in some way. Some of them are blind or deaf or have mobility issues, chronic illnesses.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is dated in the whole, like, you know, magical psychic blind person. Like, you know, if they're disabled, they must be able to make up for it somewhere else with psychic powers. Yeah.
Their ESP powers means they're not really that disabled. They're able.
I mean, it depends on the Mu. Honestly,
it definitely depends on the character. Like, there are some characters that really got the short end of that drawing.
Yeah. I feel like Soldier Blue is just like struggling. I mean, he's like 1 billion years old too. But it's also like. He's struggling. He's also the best character.
Yeah,
again. This is just like, you really see a lot of the innovation that Takemiya does with paneling in all of her works. I really love like the thing that this shows up in 70s manga a lot, but I really associate it with Takemiya.
Mm-hmm.
I guess because of the way that she integrates it, but the way that she'll, like, almost like a Zoe trope, right?
Yeah.
Where you'll see, like, the entire scope of a movement being drawn, you know, in sequence. You know, like if someone's turning their head dramatically, it's like first it'll be in profile, and then it'll be moved slightly. And it almost creates this kind of, like, cinematic slow motion on the page, which is neat.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful manga as well, just by the way. Like, obviously, a lot of this era of manga is just gorgeous, but just if you're into, like, sweeping spacescapes, stars, then dang.
Beautiful spaceship designs, too.
Yes,
like,
it's really, really well done in just every aspect when it comes to the sci-fi.
Of course, every character is beautiful, too.
Especially Soldier Blue.
Like, in that... Yeah. Well, they're all pretty fine. I really like Physis' design. I always love when she's on the page.
Yeah.
I guess they actually technically don't have a gender.
Yeah.
But, I don't remember if the manga misgenders them, but...
I can't remember either. Also, I didn't mention, because I kind of forgot until just now, but if you're wanting to read Tutera, you actually can, via Manga Planet, which is
Ooh, oh, that's right.
Yeah, so they relicensed the series last year. It's being published toward the Terra, which is what the anime adaptations go with. That's what they call it. And it's available there. So it's a similar structure to Futakiya, where it's a monthly subscription of $6 or $7 or whatever, and you can read it there, and it's good. If nothing else on that platform interests you, it's worth checking out just for Toward the Terra or To Terra.
Yeah, pay the $6, you know, just for 1 month, and just like read To Terra.
Yeah, it's short. It's only 3 volumes. It's only, you know, probably 20
probably
chapters.
5 or something.
I don't know.
Like, they're omnibuses, but they're not huge omnibuses.
I don't know if they're I don't remember. But yeah, it's a good series. And if you're into like ESP, like Esper or Psychic, sci-fi, any of these things that we've talked about, it's well worth reading. And you can't, you know, you can't afford to track down the physical editions because believe me, it's a lot. Then that's a great option to read something that is so great.
I love just like all the images of just like people floating among the stars. It's like so atmospheric. Like, it's you really kind of, I feel like you get into the headspace of the Mu, who are kind of you know, always psychically aware of everything around them. Yeah. Existing kind of on another plane, so it's pretty.
Andromeda Stories is a little bit, like, because it's not written by Takumi, I would say it's not as strong as, like, it's definitely not as strong as To Terra. It's probably a little bit easier to find, though, to buy. I can't remember if this one is available anywhere else. I don't think so. It's an there's a lot of interesting ideas in it. It's again like a space style story, and it's about like a marriage between two planets royals, and then there's a big invasion from another planet, and so things don't work out, and they're kind of fighting against these alien machines, and there's a lot of interesting ideas there. It's not nearly as cohesive as To Terra, which is kind of saying a lot because Toward the Terra isn't like super cohesive.
All over the place.
But it's fine for what it is. It is worth reading, but it's not like a must read comparatively to Terra.
Yeah, I mean the pictures will be pretty. I really can't speak on it because I haven't read it since high school and I don't remember it at all.
Yeah, it's more of like a drama sci-fi than like, I mean, To Terra is a drama sci-fi, but that has a supernatural element to it as well, whereas Andromeda Stories is really like just the sci-fi type of story.
Yeah, speaking of just sci-fi, the Year 24 member who, thanks to Rachel Thorne's hard work over the years, has the most work in English is Moto Hagio.
A name which everyone should be familiar with if you've listened to this podcast before.
Yes, or any of my videos, sporadic as they are, because my channel is Moto Hagio fan channel, but stealth. She is my favorite mangaka of all time. So we have many titles from her actually in English. We have most recently The Po Clan is coming out, so that's gonna be 2 volumes in all. We have the first one, so the first half of the story. We got Otherworld Barbara, which is hard sci-fi.
Yes. Yeah.
We have The Heart of Thomas.
Yeah.
Which is one of the first BL manga ever.
Yeah.
We have A Drunken Dream and Other Stories, which collects a variety of stories from throughout her career.
Uh-huh.
Short stories.
Yes.
And then we have out of print, we have They Were 11 and AA Prime, which are both. They Were 11 is a kind of 100-page-ish short story sci-fi that has an anime, so that's probably like her most well-known work over here. And then AA Prime, which is a collection of 3 sci-fi short stories.
Yeah, kind of loosely related, but not quite. They Were 11, I feel, is one that really deserves to be relicensed. I own it because I have the 4 shoujo stories illegal anthology that Viz put out.
I have it in floppies.
Yeah.
Actually, the floppies aren't that hard to find.
But it would
it's 4 floppy issues.
But it would be really nice to get a new polished release.
Last year or the year before was actually Moto Hagio's the 50th anniversary of her career. Last year, I think. And so we've got all kinds of like beautiful new editions in Japanese. Including the collector's edition that our collector's edition of the Poe Clan was based on.
Yeah.
And one of those, which I have in my hands now, is a gorgeous collector's edition of They Were 11, which includes the sequel story as well. Fanographics.
Hey guys.
Maybe. I don't know.
Hey guys, I have a proposition for you, please.
I have a proposition to make.
Also, we didn't mention it, but there is actually another Hagio work coming out from Dempa, of all people.
The cat one.
Yeah, Little Leo. So, I don't know anything about it, aside from...
Me either.
It's Hagio.
The cat's really cute.
So. Yeah, so, I mean, I'm gonna buy it, because why not? It looks wonderful. And, yeah, everyone else should as well. I think it's about a cat who sees it, I don't know. Everyone perceives it as a human or something. Like, it's something along those lines.
It's just like Iguana Girl, but a cat.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Little less depressing than Iguana Girl, hopefully.
Oh, I was gonna say Neo-Parasite M, the Parasite tribute comic anthology, also has a story from Moto Hagio, which is
the best one.
The reason to buy that book.
Yeah. the F one, like, anthology, it has like quite a good handful of stories. The M one, buy it for Hagio.
Yeah.
There's other.
The M one has a Moto Hagio story in it.
It's the first one, it's the best one, and it's got a color page. So
you can just stop there.
Yeah. Just cut that one out from the rest of the book and just keep that.
Paste it into Neo-Parasite F.
But yeah, there's a lot of Hagio that she's written. There's a lot that we have in English, not nearly as much as she's written. And it's kind of interesting that in English, I think most people associate her with The Heart of Thomas, which, of course, like, they should. But in Japan, a lot more of her works are sci-fi and focused on that. And I think... so the perception of her work in Japan is more so the kind of Star Red, They Were 11.
I feel like actually the perception of her in Japan is mostly the Poe Clan. Like, that was her most popular title. It's actually one of the first titles that was collected into graphic novels, which is interesting. I think it was collected into graphic novels before The Rose of Versailles started being collected into graphic novels. But tankobon is the word I'm awkwardly translating.
yeah. The standard volume format that manga readers are familiar with.
Yeah. So, because it was so popular, and it's actually the reason that The Heart of Thomas was able to be finished, was because the Poe clan was so popular that even though The Heart of Thomas was unpopular, they were like, whatever, finish it.
Well, here you go. Finish it up.
Yeah, it's funny, like the ladies that I was talking about who get all excited about The Rose of Versailles, it's like, I say, like, I like Moto Hagio, and they're like, who? And I'm like, the Poe clan. And they're like, oh, that scary one.
Oh.
So they know that one. Sometimes. Yeah, but it's like a lot of her work is sci-fi. If you read, like, literally any interview with her, is obviously her first and greatest love is science fiction. So, yeah, I was really happy when we got Otherworld Barbara as, like, kind of a full-length sci-fi work from her. And it is a lot.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in that manga.
Yeah, I think you reread it for this, didn't you?
Yeah, I reread Otherworld Barbara. I also reread Heart of Thomas because I hadn't read that in a very long time. I had read Poe Clan just a couple months ago, so I didn't need to reread that one. And of course, Versailles, I just got like a couple weeks ago, so I still remember that. So I did a little bit of rereading for this, and I have very, I remember They Were 11 very strongly, so I didn't need to reread that one, so, but, yeah. Lots of prepreration for this podcast.
Otherworld Barbara, I couldn't reread because the first half of it is in America. That title is... I feel like every idea she's ever had just, like, crammed into, like, one series. It's like there's, like, this parallel... Shut up, Facebook Messenger. There's a... Distracted. Shut up. There's a parallel world called Barbara, that seems to be some sort of bizarro dream world that is surrounded by calamity, but seems to be a bit of a utopia, where there's, like, versions of people in that world that seem to also exist in the real world. But at different ages. There's, like, cloning. Yeah. There's de-aging. There's I guess the emotional core of the story is this sort of very broken relationship between a father and his son, which is very compelling. Hagio loves those estranged family relationships. Yeah. But there is definitely a climate apocalypse scenario going on here that I thought was a very interesting take on that. But yeah, it's like if you are, like, interested in, like, hardcore, like, speculative sci-fi, that's, like, getting into, like, all this, like, physics of the universe, like, theory of gravity stuff, it's like, this is your manga. I feel like we get a decent amount of sci-fi, but we do not get this kind of sci-fi.
Yeah.
Very often.
Yeah.
It's very literary.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. But it's very good. That's one of her more... It's interesting with Barbara because it is one of her more recent titles that came out in
2002 to 2005.
Yeah, so it's a much more recent work compared to some of the stuff we've talked about already. And you have to say that these women, a lot of them, are still writing. They are still making manga. They do have stuff coming out still, even to today. Hagio has Po-clan, like, spin-off sequel stuff that she's been working on.
Dreams of Spring.
Yeah, so there's a lot of,
and
like...
Unicorn.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like, just because these women are older, they're in their 70s now, and they've, had huge popularity in the past, doesn't mean, or sometimes not huge popularity, but they have made their impact during the 70s, doesn't mean that they're not still creating manga today, which is kind of cool and exciting.
Yeah. I have a really good short story collection from Hagio called Nanohana that she actually wrote those stories in response to the 2011 disaster. So, yeah, definitely still making great work. So, I guess, what is your favorite Hagio title that we've gotten?
It's so hard to choose. That's like asking, like, which is your favorite child. I would say, like, for as short as it is, They Were 11 is so good in just 100 pages that it's like, you'd be amiss not to talk about it. Po-clan is fabulous in just, like, so many different ways. And of course, Heart of Thomas is just, not only is it hugely historically important for BL and for, like, classic or kind of literary type of movement and all of that. It's just really, really, really wonderful. I also want to mention, I really like, we talked about Drunken Dream and Other Stories. I really like Iguana Girl, we mentioned, is a wonderful, like, that's worth reading. That's probably the strongest one, as well as Hanshin, Half God. Those two are, like, the best of those.
So that's Iguana Girl is essentially Moto Hagio, like, reconciling with a very troubled relationship with her mother that she had growing up. And it's this kind of surrealist story about a girl who sees herself as this ugly iguana because that's all her mother ever saw her as. Everyone else just sees her as a normal girl, and when we see her reflection in the mirror and stuff, she just looks like a normal girl. But when she looks in the same mirror, she sees this iguana. And it's like her struggling to find her self-worth, and when, she grew up being told that she was nothing but an ugly iguana. And finding a place where an iguana like her can fit in. Yeah. It does have a pretty heartwarming ending, that story. But it is, if you've ever had family struggles, it's a hard story to read. But it's beautiful. I don't even have words to describe it. But it's only like 40-ish pages long, 30, 40. And it packs such an impact. Hanshin's even shorter. It's only 15 pages. This is kind of a horror short story. Again, very surreal. It's about conjoined twins, one of whom is very beautiful and doll-like, but she's mentally slow.
Yeah.
And then one who is this, like, shriveled, kind of corpse-like creature, who is very sharp-minded.
Yeah.
And, she grows up seeing her sister being loved and herself being treated like trash, and she grows to resent her sister, and things escalate from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the ending to that one is very, very tragic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not too many fully happy or lighthearted stories when we're talking about Hagio.
No. They Were 11 is very upbeat.
Yeah.
That one is it has an anime.
Yep.
VA. This if you've read Astra Lost in Space, Astra Lost in Space takes a lot of influence. I would say very obvious influence from They Were 11. Which is fantastic. I love both of them.
Yeah.
But
if you liked that, you should check out. Somehow check out.
I feel like Luca's whole deal is like such it's still a little like in a couple aspects, but for the most part, it feels like a very interesting update on like Frol.
Yeah.
But anyway, this is about 100 pages short story. It's about these young boys who are
going to trying to get to university. Like they're doing a test to get.
They're doing an entrance exam for this like very prestigious, like I think
galactic university,
spaceship piloting. University. And basically the final test is a practical. They have to survive together on a spaceship out in deep space for a set amount of time.
I think it's a week, yeah. And there's 10 to a group, but when they get on there...
Yeah, there's 10 to a group, but...
when they arrive...
There were 11!
And so there's obviously a question, and the ship itself is, like, a lot of the support systems aren't functioning, so there's a traitor in the midst, and we have to figure out who it is, why they're doing this, what's going on. They can't contact the
systems are malfunctioning.
Yeah.
There's a mysterious plague spreading about the spaceship, and someone seems to have planted it there. So,
guns get involved, as they tend to do.
Yeah. And it's just so beautifully paced and suspenseful and fun. Like, each and every one of the boys are so, like, memorable for how little time that they have to make themselves memorable.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's some more gender fuckery.
Yeah.
We have... Essentially, there's a portion where... one of the boys is called Frol. And they are...
Frolberry Cherry Frol is his full name.
Yeah. Yeah. They are very effeminate looking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of fairly quickly revealed that they're
in their
of indeterminate sex.
Yeah, in their alien species at some point.
So basically they're like, "Oh my god, you're a girl." And Frol is like, "What the fuck are you talking about? What about this says girl to you?" And, it turns out that in their planet, basically, the people on their planet don't sexually differentiate until they come of age. So Frol is currently neither. Their gender is child.
Yes.
They
Man, what a mood. I feel child gender half the time as well.
Honestly, Frol's entire character is a mood. Even at the end where they're like, I guess I'll be a girl if I can marry you. I'm like, that's a little, but also, like, I feel that.
It's, again, of its time. It's not, these aren't perfect series, especially under modern scrutiny, but, you know, just gotta.
And then there's another character who's also a third gendered character. So, you know, their definition of putting 10 boys on a ship, it seems to be very loose. But,
but our main character for this series, I mean, Frol is sort of a main character, but Tada is kind of the leader of the group. He is the rational one. Earth. Yes, he's trying to...
I don't think he's the leader. I think King is more the leader.
But he's the one who keeps everyone from killing each other.
Yeah.
With suspicion.
He's Mr. Protagonist Man.
Yes. And there's a romance that develops between him and Frol as well, which is kind of secondary to the story. I mean, there's not much you can do in 100 pages, but it's there.
Yeah. But I was gonna say, like, the figuring out that Frol is third gendered, essentially, leads to this whole, like, around the campfire discussion of, like, gender roles on each of their planets, which is really cool. Like, you see Hagio just sort of exploring what gender could mean to different societies.
Yeah, which is something, unfortunately, a lot of sci-fi, in manga and also in novels and stuff, doesn't do nearly as much as it could. Like, there's so much that alien societies could do with, like, not having the same concept of gender or sexuality or anything compared to Earth that is often forgotten for, like, yes, here's heterosexual, the planet for every species. You know, okay, that's fine.
Yeah. You definitely see Hagio, like, in interviews as well, just, like, chafing a lot against gender roles and female gender roles. I definitely think Frol was probably a very liberating character to write for her. Their struggles kind of reflect a lot of what you see from interviews from her, so... but yeah, They Were 11 is great. I feel like it's very accessible.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, Astro Lost in Space, like,
it's basically, it's basically like if you took the idea of They Were 11 and made it into a 60 chapter or however long that series is and it expands. Oh, it obviously has a lot more time to expand on a lot of different things. They're very, 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 very similar. And I was really happy about that when I finally got around to reading it.
Oh my gosh, I was reading it and I was like, this is such, like, 70s shoujo space opera vibes. And specifically Hagio vibes.
Yeah.
So.
Also, I just looked it up. The film was available on DVD from Central Park Media back in the day. It's super out of print, but I'm sure you could hunt it down somewhere.
I knew I remembered, like, Mike Toole or somebody talking about it on ANN. But yeah, you know, it's somewhere. Honestly, the manga's probably easier to find.
Yeah.
Just buy the floppies. They're fine. Or you can be dedicated like G and look for 4 shoujo stories.
Yeah, really scrounge around.
And we can hope and pray for this collector's edition to come out.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Some dreams there.
I would love the sequel to come out in English as well. I mean, it's possible. It's only one book.
Yeah. Hey,
Seven Seas.
Things have...
Udon.
Yes.
You know?
Times they have been a-changin', and it'd be nice if we got some of these, not as well known.
Viz, you put out Astra Lost in Space. Why not?
Hey, yeah, that'd be collected of both. You'd have They Were 11 and the sequel, and it'd be great. It just whatever.
Yeah.
People would buy it. Well, I mean, I say people. I would buy it.
I would buy it.
That's 2 sales right there.
All my friends would buy it.
I'd encourage other people to buy it.
My Twitter bubble would buy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's They Were 11. A Prime is also very good. It's I feel like the Tacto is the sort of intersex character in one of the stories who feels like a bit of a furthering of the themes that were dealt with gender-wise in They Were 11.
Yeah.
Gradual progress. That one's about kind of this genetically altered human species called the unicorns that are called that because they have like this weird streak of red hair right in the middle of their like head. Yeah, it's another very solid sci-fi collection. This book isn't quite as rare as four shoujo stories, but it's still pretty rare.
It is also...
I found it eventually.
Yeah, it's flipped. So again, it's like that era of like late 90s viz manga. So don't go into it expecting current standard stuff. But it's around if you want to look for it.
Yep. If you find it for a good price, I'd say it's definitely worth picking up.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Then we have A Drunken Dream and Other Stories, which is excellent. I think a very good primer to Hagio. It's a great place to start. So again, if you find it for a good price. That one of the Fantagraphics releases, I think, has been the most difficult to find. I don't know how it is right now. These ones flip-flop a lot. This one and The Heart of Thomas in particular. Like one day it'll be $5 and the next it'll be like $500.
Yeah.
So, like, you just gotta catch it on a good day. Be dedicated. But if your library has it, for example, that was where I first read it. It is... A lot of those stories are just absolute masterpieces, so... And again, it's a very great primer to her work, because it spans her entire career, from the 70s to the aughts when it came out. And it covers a wide variety of different genres as well. There's sci-fi short stories, surrealist short stories, realist short stories. There's a wide variety.
Yeah.
Then The Heart of Thomas is my second favorite manga of all time. This is, again, one of the first BL manga ever. Along with, actually the first BL was a short story by Keiko Takemiya called In the Sunroom. And the first, like, full-length BL works were Takemiya's Kaze Toki no Uta and The Heart of Thomas.
Yeah.
So, The Heart of Thomas... it's so good. I actually might get into it a little bit.
Yeah.
With one of the questions, so maybe I'll save it.
Okay.
And then Otherworld Barbara we talked about, and The Poe Clan is from the 70s. It's about vampires. It's very angsty. It's very gorgeous. It's got some great homoerotic tension between the two main vampire boys. That would be Edgar Portsnell and Alan Twilight. Some more names. And just great 70s shoujo drama. This is like high soap opera drama.
Yeah.
Like The Rose of Versailles. It is ridiculous. But it's also dealing with, themes of youth and coming of age and what it means to be eternally adolescent, which sounds horrible. The sort of unreliability of memory comes up a lot. Loss and grief and what that means when your world is frozen. They're not like new themes for a vampire story, but I think that Hagio has a very interesting take on those ideas that makes it worth reading and considering.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Apart from all the beautiful art and, gay quips and high drama. So yeah. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Not really. I mean, you always kind of just all I would be doing is parroting exactly what you said. I was 100% agreement.
Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good.
Go man.
But I think it just shows how like similar our feelings are on a lot of these titles, but especially this one. And it is it is very beautiful, and it's just one that I've said it before, you've said it before, we've talked about it on the podcast before, but it's just like a must read. It's just, even if you're not into the typical genre, even if you're not super into, if you have any interest in like the history of manga and manga that have made a huge impact on the industry across the board, you'd be amiss to not be reading it or have read it at one point. There's so much of this stuff that you can see being copied and being paid homage to in later works, and the trends that they started and the tropes that they started. It's just, I mean, it's
in not just shoujo and josei, but like we were saying with Astro Lost in Space, like their reach has reached across demographics. They are hugely influential to manga in general.
Yeah.
You see their influence perhaps the most, like obviously, in shoujo manga and josei manga, but there's a lot of it in shonen and seinen as well.
Yeah, and it's also so nice that we've now gotten to a point where we can talk about these series as viable releases in English, because for so many years, decades, we've had kind of a empty pocket of these works. And we just even with Versailles, again, it's kind of a travesty that we've only gotten it now. And
it's just like, if you read it, you will feel its echoes.
Yes.
In so many of the works that you've seen and read. It is everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Year 24. So I think we're going to finish out the podcast with just a couple questions we got. I know it's a bit of a esoteric topic, so...
Yeah, so our first question, I think we'll do Olive's. This is Olive the Manga Reader at All of the Manga. She asks, obviously, obviously we want all of it in print, but is there a specific Year 24 manga series you would want to see published in English?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to go first?
So I mentioned it earlier, but Dear Brother, I think, would be one that could definitely be a good one to be licensed. It's only short at 3 volumes. It's an Ikeda work. Hopefully with Rose of Versailles, people will be more interested in it. And I think it's kind of that slice of life drama, romance, story that is very, it's very Ikeda. And I also hope that maybe one day we may get the anime once again, but again, I'm not sure how viable that is. I'd also be interested in reading Yamagishi's work, especially Terpsichore or Arabesque, her dancing manga. I mean, the other one with the prince would be very interesting, but it's longer at 11 volumes. I mean, the ballet one is 10, but I think it's a little bit more approachable than...
it sounds a bit similar in premise to Requiem of the Rose King.
Yeah, perhaps. But, I mean, I'd like to see both of them. In a world where I was the one choosing licenses, these would both be on my list, but I feel like the familiarity of, or the understandability from a Western perspective of ballet compared to, like, a Japanese historical figure.
Who is Prince Shotoku?
Exactly. Like, I think people would be a bit more forgiving towards Terpsichore or Arabesque. I
think especially because one of the main things of that one is like how heretical this particular portrayal of Prince Shotoku is. This sort of like gender non-conforming, homosexual, like very deviant character.
Ooh, deviant.
Is kind of like one of the main, I think, things that was kind of revolutionary about it. Was just like taking this character who's very like
understood in a certain
put on a
way.
pedestal,
has a certain
and being like
reputation,
wear it up,
and therefore made it better. Also, The Door into Summer by Takemiya is one that I think as a 1-volume short story collection that is kind of, I think there's a lot that that got an anime film for one, so I think there's probably some interest in there. And of course, like I said, Star Red would be one that I'd be interested in from Hagio as well. I mean, there's so many, but I think if we're talking about ones that probably would have a chance, being shorter and being kind of more well-known, those ones would be my choice. The kitten one sounds cute as well. I'd like to read that, but
it's adorable.
But I don't know how
so
possible that one would be.
It would be a hard translation. Her manga are wordy. But it's so cute. For me, if I'm being realistic, I actually think that the new edition of They Were 11 is, like, in terms of, like, relatively speaking, I think likely.
Yeah.
Compared to anything else I would suggest. I would like to see one of Yumiko Oshima's one-shots. I did quite enjoy Banana Bread Pudding. That's kind of a long shot, but it is only 1 volume, so it would be nice to see, someone other than Takemiya and Hagio and Ikeda in English. Anybody, really. But that said, I don't care about realism. I want Kaze Toki no Uta, and we're never gonna get it because it's 17 volumes long. And a good chunk of the middle of that is, like, very detailed, like, backstory for Gilbert, who,
yeah, has some
was
issues.
taken in by his uncle at, I think, 4.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when the grooming began.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of highly triggering content in that series. It's an absolute masterpiece. Like, I could never forget it. And it is absolutely Takemiya's magnum opus.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's not going to happen. But I want it.
You could start learning. Is it Italian? That, like, I think Italy has a release for it. Italy or France?
Yeah, a bunch of countries have a release for it. But I mean, I don't need to learn Italian to read manga that's available in Japanese.
But for anyone else who's listening and who may want to, but Japanese is just like a bit above their pay grade, then I mean, there's Italian, and I think French releases of those. Mm-hmm. Maybe. There's definitely Italian.
That would make sense because it takes place in France. But yeah, it's BL. It's about the sort of coming of age of a boy named Serge, who is half French and half Romani, at a boys' boarding school in France, and sort of his growing fascination and eventual friendship and romantic relationship with a boy who is very looked down upon by everyone at the boarding school because he skips classes and there's rumors about drugs. Mm-hmm. He has a tendency to sleep with the older male students.
Yep.
It's his name is Gilbert, and he ends up roommates with Serge, who is a very straight-laced, like, a very capital G good boy. Mm-hmm. He is a puppy. And he is absolutely shocked by this boy who shows up with new bruises every day, and keeps trying to proposition him.
As you do.
So he has a very complicated relationship with sexuality. Mm-hmm. So I feel like, honestly, like, the depiction of his, like, relationship with sexuality and with his body and trauma and the ways that he, like, is so desperate for any kind of connection with anybody, but then will immediately turn around and push them away and spit on their face, is, like, it's such a complicated portrayal of, like, a very deeply traumatized person. Mm-hmm. Who grew up with very insecure attachments and a very warped and broken perception of sexuality. Yeah. He's one of my favorite manga characters of all time. But it's a difficult read.
Yeah. I think
it's a difficult read.
There's a somewhat of a disclaimer you have to make with a lot of Year 24 manga, where it's like, you go into it not expecting a fun time. Like, it's...
Yeah. Oh, that's the other one I want. A Savage God Reigns by Moto Hagio, which is 17 volumes long.
Yeah.
And it's about a boy named Jeremy, whose mother remarries to a guy in England, and he has to move across the country, and finds out pretty damn quickly that her new husband is into him. Mm-hmm. And the first half of the story is a very traumatic portrayal of this horrible abuse that he suffers every day while trying to keep his mother unaware.
Yeah.
And Then he fiddles with his abuser's car and gets him killed. It's very ambiguous whether, like, the thing that he did to the car actually caused the accident or not.
Mm-hmm.
But contrary to what he had been planning, his mother was also in the car. Mm-hmm. So the second half of the story is him living with his stepbrother, Ian, who obviously grew up with a very different perception of his father than the one that Jeremy knows.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just, like, racked with guilt over what he perceives as his murder of his mother. Ian is, like, has very complicated feelings about learning this horrible new side to his father, with feeling like he's going to become like his father, with, you know, going back and forth, like, no, he couldn't have been like that. Jeremy's crazy.
Yeah.
It's, yep.
Yep.
That one is, like, it's so beautiful. Like, Hagio, I feel like some of her best, like, surrealistic imagery is in that series. There's one image that's obviously an Edgar Allan Poe reference, but I just love it. Because Jeremy, like, is, you know, having a bit of a psychotic episode, and he walks into the basement, and his own corpse falls out of the wall next to him.
Mm-hmm.
And rots. And it's just like, whoa.
Whoa, dude.
Whoa. Yeah. So, harrowing. I thought about rereading it for this podcast, but I couldn't because I'm stressed out right now.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, we're not going to get either of those series in English, but
no.
Those are the ones that I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. If life was kind and we were the ones choosing licenses, and
then I would go broke
immediately. We'd have no money. It would be a terrible investment, but our hearts would be happy.
I really do want Kazutoki no Uta, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one that would be very, very surprising if it was ever licensed, but I mean, it's not wholly improbable considering Europe has it.
If someone could get a good deal on it digitally.
Yeah. That would be a really good option. Like, that's a really good candidate for a digital release. Like,
it's like, if you're into 70s shoujo, you know it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's got its own notoriety, I guess. Yeah. Very specific notoriety.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of really great titles out there. A lot that we will probably never see in English, unfortunately. And
The Heart of Thomas has a sequel that I would like to have. It's very short. It's just a couple short stories. I think one of them's about Oscar and the other one's about Eric, but I would like that.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. It's always good when a story, and Pokemon as well has some, we talked about some short stories. It would be nice being able to get those.
New series, actually. It's got 2 full-length volumes out.
Nice.
I'm not sure if it's going to be more than those 2 volumes, but it's like being serialized in flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So that I think is a possibility after the main series comes out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As like a supplemental book.
Would love that. So our next
question. If you buy it.
Yeah. We will get it. Spend your money, folks. I shouldn't say that when the world is very...
Spend your money for my sake.
Yes. Spend your money because Lord knows I can't spend mine. So the next question we have is from our good friend Aisha, friend of the channel, Mama Loves Manga. And she asked, which year 24 mangaka or series was your introduction to this iconic group? I think it's probably the same.
I actually think it was... Oh. I don't think so. For me, I think it was Takemiya. I think I read Andromeda Stories first and then Tutera. I wasn't aware of, like... I knew I was reading something old, but I didn't know about, like, the year 24 group or anything at the time. But Tutera stuck with me, so... Yeah. That was, I think, my first 70s manga in general.
I would say my first is definitely Hagio. Like, there's no two ways about it. It would probably be, it was either They Were 11 or Heart of Thomas, and I can't quite remember which one. It doesn't really matter because I read them so quickly in succession that either's fine. I think
the first one where I knew what it was A Drunken Dream and Other Stories.
Yeah, because the thing is, once I read those two, because I think I don't remember. I can't remember if I was looking for 4 shoujo stories because it had They Were 11 in it, or if I had that, I'd found it and then was... Or if I had read, Heart of Thomas and then wanted more Hagio. Regardless, Hagio was my introduction. I read all of her stories that were available in English at the time within, 2 months of discovering her. Since then, we've had more of her titles be released with Pokemon and Otherworld Barbara. But yeah, there's... It was probably... I think it was They Were 11. It does, as I said, it doesn't matter. And
Hagio.
As they say, the rest is history, quite literally. And it's been really great being able to support it now, as that has become more of an active part of the manga releases in English.
Yeah, The Rose of Versailles feels like such a culmination of this wild journey.
Yeah, definitely.
Even though I'm gonna read so much more year 24 from here on out, it's it feels like this was the goal we were coming to.
Yes, yeah. There's a lot of sometimes when you're a manga fan, you get caught up in a lot of really good series that you're having a lot of fun with, a lot of great series that you really enjoy. But then there's some times where you're just proud that a series is getting released. That's
great job, sweetie.
It's a mixture of just I can't believe, it's incredulity as well. It's just amazing that it got licensed, and I'm just so happy that it is now able to be available for everyone. Rose of Versailles, Pokemon was another one, which was just a total surprise, but a very welcome surprise. And I hope we see more of that type of thing happening, especially when we're talking about this era of shoujo manga, because hopefully these newer releases prove that there is some interest.
Last question.
Yeah. From Zara Ymir, at Ymir Zara. Thanks for doing a discussion on such a talented group. Who's your favorite year 24 artist? I think that's kind of obvious.
Moto Hagio.
Yeah.
is my favorite mangaka ever.
Yeah, I mean, Hagio's incredible, and just for me, being exposed to her work first as well, I definitely she set the standard for a lot of the stuff when I'm reading year 24 groups works. But in saying that, everything I've read I've really loved, or really respected at least. Ikeda's phenomenal. Takemiya is incredible, as we've spent the last 2 hours talking about it, but and I feel like if we got more of the other women who are not as well known in English, if we had got some of their work in English, then my perception on things might change. But I mean, Hagio is kind of, I love her and everything she does.
Yeah. To me, it's she's very as well as like Natsuki Takaya, who's did my favorite manga, which is Fruits Basket.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those creators where it's like you kind of like, honestly, the reason I read is to like feel this like connection with someone,
mm-hmm.
you know, across oceans and decades, and you know, someone I'll never meet, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
Just like, and feeling this person gets it. This person has thought the things that I've thought. And I thought that I was the only one, but I'm not. Like, that feeling is so important to me, and Hagio is one of those few creators who, like, I just, like, in terms of, it almost feels like the way that we think,
mm-hmm.
at least as it comes through her manga. Like, it jives with me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I get it,
yeah.
right? I think everyone has, you know, at least a couple creators who are like that, where it's just like, this gets me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and yeah, Hagio makes me feel that way. So she's very special to me. If you've ever heard me talk about anything ever, she does come up inevitably. And yeah, I'm obsessed. The Heart of Thomas, like I said, is my second favorite manga of all time. It means a lot to me. It helped me come out to myself as bisexual. I reread it periodically.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the only books that I brought with me to Japan. Yeah. It's, Hagio. It's Hagio.
Yeah. What more do you need to say? Nothing, really. But yeah, I mean, that's our last question, and thank you guys so much for sending in your questions as per always. Not a huge amount of questions, but I think that was a little bit expected when we chose this topic. Hopefully all of our answers were informative and interesting, and you learned something, if not about these women individually, but the group itself and their importance within manga. So yes, next month, unless you have something else to say, just to wrap up, right? No?
Read these books.
Read these books, support your 70s.
Check them out. The ones that are available digitally, you know, check out those options. These are the kind of books that libraries tend to like to collect, so, you know, check out your library, check out your interlibrary loan program, or, of course, you know, if you've got the cash to spare, look into checking them out physically. They are all, for the most part, like Fantagraphics releases are obviously always stunning.
Udon's
the Rose of Versailles
we gushed about,
like, such an extra release for a very extra story.
And even the
Vertical's old Tutera releases are
very nice.
So they're beautiful books too. So
yeah, they're worth the investment.
Certainly worth. If you're able to afford it, recommend looking into any and all of the titles that we gushed about.
So with that, next month's topic, we're actually doing a series focused podcast. So we're going to be talking about a particular manga series, one that we both love, adore, and have lots to talk about.
Yes.
And it's the first in this style of podcast. So we're going to be talking about Devil's Line by Ryo Hanada. We've mentioned it on the podcast before. I don't shut up talking about it on the channel. I love this series a lot. It's
it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really, really wonderful. It's being released by Vertical. It was also shortly simulpubbed on Crunchyroll for a while. The 14th volume is coming out, which is the final volume, is coming out this month, at the end of this month. So hopefully it will give people the opportunity to read it or catch up with it or whatever else you may want to do. The final volume, I will say, is like short stories or side story kind of epilogue stuff. So if you've read the 13 volumes, you have the main story, like you've read the conclusion. But that last volume is something really wonderful as well. So I think it is good to wait for it and to talk about it. So let us know your questions if you're reading it.
It'll be like trying something new. For sure, if you want to read along, that would be, I think, really fun. I'm sure we'll be getting into spoilers for the entire series as it is a series discussion. So, come prepared for that. But, if you want to read it beforehand, if you want to just throw caution to the wind, I don't care about spoilers, that's fine too. You might come out with a new series on your to try list. But yeah, so if you've got questions about Devil's Line, we will, of course, G at some point will be putting out a tweet where you can respond with your questions, or you can put them in the comment section below this video as well.
Absolutely. And we do try to, as always, address every single question. We love you guys. You send in such wonderful questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so thoughtful. You're more thoughtful than I
am. But yes, so thank you guys so much for listening. This has been a wonderful episode to record, one that we've been looking forward to and been planning since we started this podcast, really. I hope everyone is staying healthy and safe right now, because it is kind of a not wonderful time.
Wash your hands, kids.
Wash your hands, practice social distancing. It's a great time to catch up on some of those manga you haven't gone around to.
Or listen to all of the episodes of our podcast.
Which are all available on my channel here at Simply G. Please go subscribe to Ray at Whimsical Pictures. Her content is wonderful. Her channel is just fabulous. And follow her on Twitter. You can also follow me on Twitter if you so wish. Don't know why you'd want to, but the option's there. And as always, those
Twitter is great.
the links to all of those are in the description below. But thank you guys so much for listening. We'll catch you next time. Bye till then.
Bye-bye.